I hope you were able to get something from the video by the presenter who talks about what the first words you should say in a speech are. It's one of my favorite presentations because of how useful it is, and he has some great ideas, and I agree with almost all of them. In particular, I agree with his idea that you should not state your name as the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Your audience is going to be familiar with you in a typical speech situation in some way or the other. Either you've been introduced, or there's a piece of paper saying what your name is, or they're already familiar with you. So we want to be able to avoid stating our name to start out the speech. Now, the presenter talks about 3 attention catchers that you could possibly use. One, he says you can ask a question. And I do agree that asking a question is a good way to get things going, and it also helps engage the audience because there's going to be some sort of response. Either it's going to be a verbal response, or they're going to be thinking about the question that you've asked them. So it has some potential, but there is a downside to asking questions for your attention catcher, and that is that it's very commonly used. And as a result, it's almost expected, like, well, they're going to ask a question to start off this speech. And so if you really want to catch an audience's attention, it may be necessary to look at some of the other options. And he gives us some good options to try out, like stating a startling fact. Right away you're impacting your audience and making them sit up and say, wow, I didn't know that. Or, wow, that is a big thing. And that startling fact can be a good way to provide momentum for the rest of the speech. Another option is to tell a story, and this is a great option because we love stories. We're narrative people, and we always want to know, once we get into that story, what's going to happen next. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind about stories, and it relates to time, because the attention catcher is part of your introduction. And if you remember, you want to be able to keep your introduction brief. So you've got to use a short story. And I've got another YouTube video from a presenter who talks about elements of a good story. So that's the next video. Make sure you check that out if you want to look at a story as an option for your attention catcher. Now, I think that there are some other alternatives for attention catchers that our first presenter did not mention. One is you can use a quote. And the great thing here is you get several things from a quote. One, you borrow the credibility of the person that you're quoting. Another thing is that they sometimes have a better way with words than we do. And by using their words, we sort of spruce up our own language. Another option for an attention catcher relates to action. And there are actually 2 possibilities here. The first is that you, as the speaker, perform an action. One of the best attention catchers I ever had, and certainly the most memorable, involved a speaker performing an action for the audience. And it was so impactful. It was at 8 a.m. and he was the first speaker of the day, so you had people who weren't quite all the way awake yet, and he comes up there, and he has a bottle of water, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm not sure this speech is that long that he'll need a bottle of water, but okay, let's see what happens. And the first thing he does is he takes the cap off the plastic bottle and takes a drink. And then he puts the cap back on, walks over to a metal trash can, and throws the almost full bottle of water in the trash. Now, this makes a heck of a noise, and everybody is now wide awake and ready, because he is going to talk about the problem of trash. And he's introduced it with this action of throwing this bottle of water in the trash. So performing an action can be very captivating. Another possibility related to action is that you ask the audience to do the action. And this is a great way of saying, hey, I want this to be a two-way conversation. I want you to be involved. And it sort of breaks the tradition of you just sitting up there and talking and having them just sit back and listening. So we have a lot of different possibilities with regard to what attention catchers we can use. The one key thing you need to consider with regard to any attention catcher that you're going to use, though, is that you want to be able to connect it to the speech topic that you're going to discuss. That bottle of water was a perfect connection to a speech about trash.